This church is just like the Church of the Epiphany where I grew up in Orange, New Jersey. And I said to Kobe after he spoke, I said, why aren't we going here? And he said, we could. And so we did. And I think we've been coming here ever since.
We never went back to the other church.
Never went back to St. Columbus.
St. Mary's is a historic church in a rapidly growing neighborhood, and I think we see these types of situations all over the city where you have an historic building or a historic place in an area that's growing so fast. But it's so important that we as a city support places like St. Mary's Episcopal and make sure that they have a place in neighborhoods across the city as our city continues to grow. Well, really, I was most impressed about the history of the church. Started by 28 African American men and women nearly 150 years ago.
I think the first colored Episcopal church, St. Mary's, and it was built in, about celebrating 150 years next June. It was in 1867. Would that make 150 years? I think St. Mary's Church and Howard University are the same years and age. We always accept everybody. But in that day and time, it was strictly colored, as the history states. And as I say, I'm still here in this area. Of course, as I came up, when I was a child, there weren't any houses on the other side of the street, so different things have been built as I've grown up. All around me has grown up gradually, yes, because there was nothing but colored in this area. But in 1952, these 4 houses were built. There's one of the family left of the grocery store that came up along with me, and we see each other every now and then. He's the last of his family. 5 colored, as far as I know, left here in Georgetown.
On Florida Avenue at 14th Street, so I was familiar with that neighborhood, and I saw that neighborhood change. The apartment buildings that were there, the influx of non-minorities into those luxury apartments, really, along 14th and somewhat on Florida Avenue there. So those are some demographics that speak to how this community has changed.
This has been a phenomenal change. If you were to go back in time to the 1940s, I was born in 39, but 1940s, this was churches on almost every corner of this area. George Washington University was here, but just a small facility. All of the churches now that we remember are gone, except for St. Mary's. It's a lot of movement, a lot of demographic changes, of course. This was a working class area when I grew up. African Americans, also whites, but all pretty much working class. Now you look at the neighborhood, and it's completely changed. But the university now has a big footprint in the area. But we're here, this little island, surrounded by George Washington, and we're holding our own. This area behind the church was a called St. Mary's Court, and the court was really alley dwelling.
Okay.
Row houses, pretty much dilapidated. I don't know if they even had indoor toilets. This was Washington in those days. We had alley dwellings in here. We had alley dwellings over behind K Street. It's significantly changed.
I was recruited to be on the vestry maybe after 3 or 4 years here. So I came on, I became junior warden. I served my term.
I went on the vestry in 1938 of the church, and I've been on every organization in the church. Back in those old days, I was senior warden of the vestry. I went on the vestry, and you stay on the vestry for 3 years, then you come off. And as I said, I've been senior warden, junior warden, I've been treasurer of the church, and I've been in all of the organizations, the women of the church and the altar guild.
Wanted to be a part of something that had such a long, rich history and legacy, and certainly a bright future ahead of us.
I would just say the community, and the fact, knowing the people in the church. I mean, it's like feeling like you're part of a family. It's all big, tall buildings, the universities all around. It's very diverse now. The State Department's down the street, but this church has endured over time, and it's the people, I think, in all the generations that make the church.
I enjoyed it because it reminded me so much of my home church, which is in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. I like the music. I like the focus on the prayer book as it was presented, a right one specifically, and because there was seriousness about church. And so I fell in love and I haven't left.
I've enjoyed and I look forward, first of all, to the liturgy itself, and the way that is expressed and works out here at St. Mary's is different than in other places. While we all use the Book of Common Prayer, if you're an Anglican, both here and abroad, but it's the actualization of the expression that is given to that liturgy that's, for me, very special here at St. Mary's. So the music is very, very critical to the service and the way that plays out. But I think when it really comes to it, it's the solemnity that is a part of it, the full expression of the liturgy and the Anglican tradition that makes this a very special place. It did for my wife, late wife, as well as it does for me today.
Just the history of it, and the people. Of just when people come to church, I see a stranger, I greet them. That's what the coffee hour is at church. When a stranger comes, I go and introduce myself and find out where they're from and welcome them back.
The music at Mass. And the sermon, of course.
I remember my first time here when Colby was speaking. The choir was proceeding into the church. And I was shocked because when you looked at the choir, it looked like a small group of people, and the voices were amazing. And that was the one thing that I remembered, as well as how beautiful the church was. The choir was amazing, just beautiful, and it just moved you.
We had a favorite meet and greet luncheon or dinner, as you go, with one of the sons of Alan, Father Abbott, who came to us at age 66. He was an old guy when he first started. And his picture, I have that somewhere, I'll give you. But to ask about things that he did, he was one who was behind the opening of St. Mary's Court. And I thought that was the most inspiring dinner and speeches.
Were in line with my views, and so I started looking at different churches in the Washington, D.C. area, and I visited a lot of different kinds of churches, from Lutheran to Methodist to various kinds, and I by chance stumbled upon St. Mary's. But it's a small church, but I came in and, it was new to D.C. and just really felt the spirit here, and ended up being here all these years since. Met my husband, we got married here, we were raising our kids here, so it's been a wonderful experience.
It's known as a family-owned church. Everybody as I remember, was connected to somebody, even though they didn't live in Foggy Bottom. Most people lived in Northeast, and nowadays, mostly everybody's in Maryland.
The thing that I find interesting is that when people die and they are in the area, they want to come back and be buried here at St. Mary's and experience that. When they get married, they come back to St. Mary's. So if you look at the birth to death cycle, people come back.
Yeah.
For those kinds of rituals and activities.
But really, in Foggy Bottom and in this area, and certainly across the city, it's really served as a beacon. Everywhere I go, and I talk about St. Mary's Episcopal Church, people say, the little church down near George Washington University, and I say absolutely. And so having a 150-year history in the city of Washington, D.C., having had so many members from all over our city come here, and people from all over the world have visited here. I think it's had a great influence on the Black community, particularly the Black Episcopal Palean community right here in Washington, D.C. Some of the oldest families in this town have been members of this church, many of them still here well into their 90s, and some even 100 years old, have spent their entire life coming to this church week after week, month after month, and year after year.
Basically, St. Mary's is kind of like its own little family. In the sense, when you're in St. Mary's, you're kind of in your own little world of sorts.
When I was enrolled in Sunday school, it was much different because, as I said, this was a community. So Sunday school was so large that we met in the Undercroft, we met in the Guild Room, we met in the Parish Hall. Now we have about 11 students because the families don't live in this area. So they come from other parts of the city or from Maryland and Virginia. So that part has changed, but we still try to keep the same morals and ethics for the children. We try to teach them the service, the protocol of the service, and have them be involved in the service. They're readers. We have started I have not, but one of the Sunday school teachers has started a liturgical dance group. We have a youth choir, and so we try to do things a little different now because children are different, to keep them engaged and to keep them, really excited about Sunday school, but still practicing morals and love for each other and Christianity, and teaching the service so that they will know what to do when they go into the church. So it's a little different from when I was in Sunday school here, but different but the same. But we do have activities where we ask the Sunday school students to invite their friends. And so we had like a movie fun day one day, and they invited their friends. So we had a full house for that. We had a tea for the ladies, that was a couple of years ago, for the little ladies in the Sunday school, and they invited their friends. So we do some outreach to try to bring in other students.
Well, yeah, when we first got here, there was already kind of a community, but
well, the Sunday school community was very welcoming to us. But like the second time we were there, it already felt like we had a family at church, and we learn a lot every Sunday through like methods that are like appealing to kids. So it's never like a dull moment. And we still learn about what's going on in the service, and it's nice.
There was always more of an adult choir, and we just kind of sang along, whereas for this it was our first ever really like church experience to be involved in like a chorus with, you know, other kids that are my same age. So I just think it's been a very good experience.
But like even if you don't sing, it still makes it like kind of just really for fun. It teaches you something at the same time. Yeah, it was really fun. It's a nice way to like express ministry through motion, and I think it's a really good opportunity for kids to learn about it without like making it like really like, you know what I mean, like really direct.
St. Mary's is a very welcoming place, and everyone wants to live and work. It's a cliche, but where people know their names, or they feel welcomed and loved. And I try to remember that when I go to work and say hi to a lot of people. You know, everybody's involved in their own little worlds, but you can take time out of your schedule, out of your day, to get to know people and to make it more of a welcoming place to work.
St. Mary's feeds me spiritually. It makes me able to go down to City Hall and fight for the 82,000 people that I represent. But really,
I'm Allison Seymour, a local television station for 17 years, which is amazing. And about 5 years ago, my father stopped preaching and I needed another church home. And a co-worker of mine, a director at Channel 5, he said, my family has always gone to St. Mary's. And I wanted to get back in touch with my Episcopalian roots. And so we joined about 5 years ago. And so my kids have like grown up here for the last 5 years.
Currently represent Ward 4 on the DC Council, where I push forward an agenda to make sure that people in Washington, DC can afford to live here, have great schools, great neighborhoods, and a great city government.
I came here, I was invited to come to Washington, DC as Dean of the School of Social Work at Howard University. And we had been living in Ann Arbor. I was on the faculty of the University of Michigan and also an associate vice president for academic affairs. And I was recruited and came here as dean.
I've been here only 37 years. This coming August be 38.
It's just all I know. It's my church, my life.